really enjoyed your book. I read it last night.
Oh, good.
Is it your running for office book?
No, I would never. I'd rather earn my money on my back, Kara.
It is on.
Hi, everyone. Today I'm talking to Jennifer Welch, co-host of the I've Had It podcast. I am talking to her because she's a badass, and also she's become an extraordinarily popular podcaster in just a short time from the progressive side, but she is not a progressive that you think of when you think of normal progressives. She's spicy, she's forthright, she's irreverent, she takes on Democrats as well as Republicans, and by the way, she takes on Republicans pretty hard, and she has created the single best nickname for Donald Trump, which shortened is Canks. So this episode is going to be very spicy, so keep watching. We taped our original interview with Jennifer on Friday morning before the love fest between New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani and President Trump in the Oval Office, and before Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene unleashed a hate fest at Donald Trump in announcing her decision to resign from Congress in January. So we invited Jennifer back to get her reaction to both the meeting and the resignation, and heads up, she has some creative nicknames. So when you hear her say Canks, she's referring to Donald Trump with the nickname Cankles McTaco Tits, and for JD Vance, the vice president, Little Smokey is short for failed drag queen, smoky-eyed sociopath. So, Jennifer, I don't know what to say. I'd like your first reaction.
My first reaction is that Trump has always been a disruptor, first and foremost, and the Republican midterm strategy was Zohran Mamdani is a terrorist jihadist, and he's going to be the face of the Democratic Party. And secondly, Trump likes winners. He likes people that win. And he was able to see the political optics of a man who consistently beat the establishment, consistently beat the millionaire and billionaire class. And his political instincts to ride those coattails were sharper than Chuckles and Hakim's.
Right. Right. And why do you, what did he decide that in the moment? Or because, before it, they were calling him communist, Zohran Mamdani. I think Mamdani, it's interesting because the progressives are sort of attacking Mamdani a little bit. Like, oh, he went in and talked to him. I'm like, are you kidding? He just saved healthcare. He just saved New York. He just, I thought he was respectful, which I think is appropriate. This is the president of the United States, whether you like him or not. And secondly, he pushed back, and then Trump pushed back on his behalf. That was sort of mind-blowing. Like, oh, it's okay, just call me a fascist. I don't want to get too giddy because I'm also like, this guy in 3 weeks could be invading New York, right?
100%.
Right.
I think that Zohran Mamdani got the psychological file on Canks, and it is go in and flatter him. And I bet that Zohran went in and said, we have a lot of things in common. There are people that wore shirts that said MAGA for Mamdani. People that voted for you voted for me. We both love New York. We're both from Queens. And you helped build New York to what it is, and I want to make it more affordable for everyone. That's why people voted for you. And I interviewed Zohran during the campaign in person in New York. He has megawatt charisma, personality. It's intoxicating. And his decency and his goodness radiates off of him. I mean, a once-in-a-generation type candidate.
Right. And so Trump was like, it was so interesting because you remember Elon standing next to the desk, like sort of Darth Vader. And then you have this image, which was within a short amount of time. What do you think? You tweeted me, about Stephen Miller. Like, what are the rest of them doing right now? Tell me the behind the scenes of that.
Oh, I bet Stephen and Katie Miller are on full-blown suicide watch. I bet Kristi Noem just doesn't know what to do. I bet it is jealous, party of one. Your table is now available for our little smoky eye sociopath, JD Vance. He disrupted the entire thing, both the establishment Democrats, Elise Stefanik's bid for governor, the ADL's complaint about Zohran Mamdani, which is rooted in Islamophobia. It was wild. I couldn't believe it.
Right. And he did it largely because this is a winner. This is I predicted it. Let me just say, I thought so, only because he's so handsome and such a winner that this is what attracts Trump. I watched The Apprentice. I know what he likes. He switches on a dime to people. But most of all, everything that was consistent was winner, handsome, great hair. Like that seemed to, he has great hair.
No, it's true. Carrie, your instincts on that are so true. It boils down to he saw the imagery that he could be photographed next to a winner and how politically savvy he was to see that. I went to Zohran Mamdani's victory party, and I was so shocked that Chuckles and Hakeem, both, New Yorkers, were not on the stage riding this victory's coattails, that their political instincts were so off.
Right, because of reasons that weren't going to help them with voters, right? So speaking of voters, and I want to get to Marjorie, this will help Trump because he's in the basement. I mean, the numbers are so bad. To me, this will help him.
I completely agree. I think that Zohran Mamdani's race was the canary in the coal mine. Can the people stand up against big money? And there's the richest city in the world, the richest people in the world colluded together to try to get this man to not win. And he didn't just win, he kicked their asses. And his affordability message is so on point right now. Not last night's Bill Maher, but the one before, last Friday. He did try to do a joke about Zohran Mamdani being the face of the Democratic Party. Crickets in the audience. He's popular. His policies are very, very popular. And I do think that Kanks shining that little penny and trying to get some of that glow on him might help him a bit with independence.
Right, with independence, because he looks like he can deal, right? As opposed to being everything else. But of course, it set out a firestorm within MAGA because they were already mad at him about the Saudis. They were already mad at him about a number of things, right? And the Epstein files. It certainly takes the focus off the Epstein files. This is something that actually does compared to other things. But then we have Marjorie Taylor Greene making this announcement. Thoughts? First initial thoughts.
My first initial thought was it reminded me totally of Sarah Palin. When Sarah Palin was the vice presidential candidate with John McCain, and she was, in the lower 48, and it's all glam and glitz, and she does all these media tours, and then she goes back to Alaska, and then she resigns. And so Marjorie just did this huge press blitz, and now she's going back to Congress, and it's interesting. I think the lesson that the Democrats messaging-wise can take from this is the left has hated Marjorie Taylor Greene ever since she started running, ever since she bullied David Hogg and
Jewish
all of
space
that
lasers,
stuff.
yeah.
And she's never been scared for her life until the right started bullying her.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you think it's out of fear? AOC immediately said, "Oh, she got her pension. She's going to get her pension." She made, I think, $25 million with the allegations in stock trades. And, it was interesting because here's a poem. This is something that was online. I loved all the online stuff, though. Were you eating every bit of it up last night?
Injecting it into my veins.
So funny.
Kara,
People
it was
are so
good.
So funny. So he wrote, "These people are insane, but also good riddance, but also good for her for standing up for herself, but also sheesh. That was a poem you just wrote." Like that's how I felt. Let me play her resignation announcement too, because she said this isn't 3D chess. I'm not up to something. Let's listen.
"I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn be expected to defend the president against impeachment after he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me. It's all so absurd and completely unserious. I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better."
Whoa, pulling out the battered wife. It's a populist tone. She complains about both parties, how they're broken, not doing enough to help there was many more. She put out a lot of stuff. She was up all night, right, crafting this stuff, I guess. She makes it clear she's still opposed to immigration, access to abortion, and trans rights. There's no change there. Trump said this was great news for the country. It's great. Steve Bannon told the New York Times the House is not big enough for her ambitions, personality. We haven't seen or heard the last of her. She had several key quotes. I'd love you to respond to them. Loyalty should be a two-way street. Standing up for American women who were raped at 14, trafficked, and used by rich, powerful men should not result in being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for. I have too much self-respect and dignity. She went on and on and on. And this battered wife thing. I mean, thoughts and what's happening here?
I've long thought that she was going to run for higher office, and I don't think it's Senate. I think it's president. And you just told me something I hadn't heard. I heard it for the first time just now, that Steve Bannon, that quote that he just said about the Congress isn't big enough for her ambitions.
Right.
And when I saw Marjorie with Steve Bannon, I thought to myself, Steve Bannon was the brains, the Karl Rove, if you will, behind Kanks's ascension. And Steve Bannon loves populism. He loves conspiracy theories. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is playing that playbook perfectly right now.
What does she do? What is the next thing she does? Goes on CNN, gets a contract to be on cable. So
I think she continues the rebrand because she has quite a bit to do. And I anticipate that she is going to offer an off-ramp to Republican voters who felt betrayed by Trump, who are in financial ruins, but still package it up with, we're nicer, but we still hate trans people. We're still America first. We still need to deport, immigrant children. And Republicans are comfortable in that zone. They're comfortable where you can give them a little bit of compassion with a little bit of bigotry.
And zero Epstein.
That's right.
And zero Epstein, because she's, fought against that. And I do think that fight is genuine in that regard. I don't think she's taking advantage. I mean, she is.
I think
also.
It's wild, Kara, that she ascended because she was a QAnoner, because she was against the elite cabal of pedophiles. And then she gets inside the Death Star and she finds out the elite cabal of pedophiles are the people that she campaigned for.
Oh, no, it's a movie. It's a movie.
Totally.
It is. So what is her next move? What does she fade away for a little bit? Because she, one of the things about, as you know, about the modern media environment, which I think Mamdani and Trump do well, is to constantly be present, like in people's minds. So if you were advising her, what would you say to her? I know. I'm sorry. Nice hair. Nice. No, she needs help with her.
All right. If I were advising her, I would tell her to move quickly and have a book that where she took accountability for everything. Think about Barack Obama. Yes, I did cocaine. Yes, I smoked marijuana. He got ahead of it. So a book where she basically deprograms herself. She can have a ghostwriter write it while she stays in media. I agree with you. She needs to be ubiquitous on podcasts, on cable news. She needs to blow up her social media. But I think she needs to put it in writing to get on offense of all of her former crazy positions and offer a lot of well-meaning people in rural America, and suburban America who their only piece of culture are their churches, and offer them an off-ramp that we can still be compassionate, and we got sucked into this cult and we were lied to by Trump, but our party is still here and our values are still here and we get to still hate immigrants together, but just more compassionately, kind of like a George W. Bush compassionate conservatism thing.
And then she runs for president against Smokey Eye. Smokey? Was it Little Smokey?
Little Smokey.
Little Smokey. And what is that last thing? Where does this put him? Because you can see Cruz working with this or any of the others. And obviously, Elise Stefanik is screwed, and Kathy Hochul put a knife in her back really beautifully. She's full of shit. I kind of like Kathy Hochul these days. But what happens to these different stars? Because it would be JD Vance, there's Josh Hawley, there's what does Vance do? Because it really does put him he's totally bought into everything with Trump, so much so that he seems like a suck up, and Mamdani somehow got Trump to pose in front of FDR, the greatest socialist president, right? The one who I was like, I'm glad people did notice that. I was like, it was
Kara,
in
did
front
you see where he posted on True Social a solo?
a solo,
A
yeah.
glamour shot of Zohran posing by himself?
I
I mean,
know.
this is
And
a
also with the back,
crush.
did you see the back and looking over I guess the Trump patio? I don't know what's back there now. But like the
Yes.
two of them, like he's handing over the reins. That photo was, son, this patio, this Mar-a-Lago patio shall be yours someday. And you could hear the bubble above Zohran Mamdani, this will be gone someday. But that was like a son-father kind of photo, which was, I'm sure the Trump boys were just weeping.
It was wild. I don't know if Trump is calculating like somehow legacy stuff. I mean, he's a lame duck. And I go both ways. Dictators think they're going to cling on to power forever and they never see them ever leaving, nor is there any plan. There's no succession plan. Or is he kind of colluding with, not colluding, that Zohran is participating in, but optically saying, okay, there's room in America for all of these places. But as it pertains to the people, Moses Mike Grinder Johnson, Little Smokey, the ones that are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic with Kanks, Kara, these people's careers will be over. I just do not see that there is oxygen. We're 10, 11 months in to this shit show and the wreckage and the carnage already. I don't see that the electorate is even remotely going to allow for any successor that remained loyal to the cult once biology takes care of him or the term limit.
So he's getting out before them. He is a rat. He is fleeing his ship with this. That's what I thought. I'm like, look what he just did. Like, I liked him slightly more. Like, I know it sounds crazy. I don't like him very much at all. But when he looked up at him, I was like, wow, this guy will do anything to reinvent himself.
It was somebody put on Twitter yesterday, I haven't seen Trump this happy since the McDonald's buffet at the White House. And it was a picture of Trump in front of all the McDonald's buffet, Kara, and he's like grinning ear to ear. But the photo of him looking up
I know.
adoringly at Zohran,
Yeah,
that's wild.
it is
I mean,
wild.
I
Yeah.
don't think and you heard Fox News when
Yeah.
they were giddy. They went back, that one, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the one who suggested we should euthanize Kilmeade.
Yeah.
We should euthanize homeless people.
Yeah.
After he sees it, it clicks to him and he's giddy and he's giggling. He said, well, JD Vance probably sure is so jealous.
Yeah.
Even Fox is throwing
I
Little
know.
Smokey
They
under the
were.
bus, Kara.
Yeah. Yeah. Smokey is repugnant, so I could see that. And as you know, Trump knows political popularity, and he just goes right to it. I just am like, I didn't think the first person off the ship would be the captain, but I guess so. Captain does not go down with this ship. That is what I thought. I was like, the rest of them, as he like sails away to his future and stuff. He's got to pay any price whatsoever. And it does knock Epstein off like for a second, although that's not going to go away. And let me be clear with people. If he might still invade New York with National Guard, even though he's losing everywhere from a legal perspective, but he's still Donald Trump. Let's be clear. Like, and you never know where that's going. And all I thought is everyone's meds have kicked in this week in some fashion. Like either whether
I'm
it's
sure
Marjorie
Stephen Miller had some physician on speed dial immediately. I mean, because you picture ketchup being thrown when bad things happen at the White House, and I thought about Stephen Miller just.
Yeah.
I mean, just
that's the first thing you
on
texted me.
Suicide watch, full-blown suicide watch, because this is the remedy. Multiculturalism, embrace different faiths. He embraced Zohran in such a loving, adoring way. This is the remedy to all of the white supremacy in which Stephen Miller views his plans for the United States.
Okay, last question. What do the Dems do now? You've talked about, what do they do at this point? Because he managed to like sort of attack the Republicans and the Democrats by doing this. And whatever you think of Marjorie Greene, she's out of his hair, right? For now, at least. I mean, she's
I
out of his
think
hair completely.
the Democrats have got to watch Ro Khanna. He is outflanking every single one of them all the time. He's everywhere. He's on podcast. He's on the news. We need our Democratic establishment to quit focusing on focus groups. It's not focus groups anymore. That is an old, antiquated way of learning about people. You can learn about people by simply listening to podcasts, looking at comments. And the Democrats are going to have to embrace every single Democratic candidate that wins, whether it's a centrist in Virginia or a Democratic socialist in New York. But you know what's interesting? This tells you how bad Hakeem Jeffries' political instincts
The
are.
vote.
While Trump is Krispy Kreme glazing Zohran in the Oval, Hakeem is voting to condemn socialism, just the
Right.
bullshit performative stuff
Yeah.
that they do in Congress that nobody gives a shit about.
Right.
And Hakeem is doing that, and he's constantly falling into their traps, the Republicans, and he gets outflanked all the time. And this time he gets outflanked by a fascist who Zohran put on such a charm offensive.
Yeah.
Trump said, "It's okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Call me a fascist."
Call me a
Zohran's
despot.
like, "Yeah, okay.
I don't mind.
Yeah."
Yeah, because they both look good. I hate to say it, but they both look good. And you're right, Hakeem Jeffries. I was like, are you kidding me? I already think those things are dumb. Anyway, Jennifer, I'm so glad you came back because I was like, I must speak with him about these things.
Yes.
So I don't know what's going to happen Monday, but let me just say the only thing I thought of as I was reading all this, one thing after the next, it was at dinner, was you can't go to dinner, first of all, we are actually in a simulation, and some really bored teenager from the future is like going, oh, here's what I'm going to do today. That's the first time I was like, this is not real. This cannot be real. But it is.
It was wild.
Wild.
And a much needed salve for our tormented brains and hearts of what happens every day being an American and the instability that we feel on a daily basis.
Yeah, you felt good for a second, like,
Yeah.
we can get along, I guess. Even a fascist and a socialist can get along.
But like you said, Kara, this could all switch. With one Truth Social post
Right.
the minute we click not to record
If
any
someone
longer.
else gets to him, and then tries to convince him. Anyway, I'm eager to hear your show about what all the Oklahomans think of this. You're there for the next week, so I'm sure it'll be interesting to see their reaction
Yes.
to all this. Anyway, thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate you coming back.
Thank you, Kara.
Jennifer, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kara. I think you're very cool. And so
Oh.
I feel cooler being on your
Oh,
podcast.
stop it. You're the cool one right now. You're in like the center of the red hot. Did you expect this success so quickly?
No, I did not. We originally started just shit talking.
Yeah.
Stuff that is a grievance to anybody. But
Toddlers are assholes. That was the one that really.
yeah, they are. I mean, you love them and they're important, but God, they can be assholes. And
I just had one of those encounters this morning. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
Over shoes.
As you start seeing what's happening politically, I've always been a diehard political junkie and rather outspoken about it. And I can't help but for these opinions to come out of me. And so I thought maybe it would be kind of a niche political thing, not that we would have this type of platform.
Yeah. So you and your co-host, Angie Sullivan, who's not here, how dare her, have two podcasts. She's doing some with her kids. There's a flagship show, I've Had It, and also the shorter daily podcast, IHIP News, or is it IHIP News? IHIP. You've got about 4 million followers across all your platforms, and you've added more than 1 million subscribers to YouTube since the election. So Democrats are starting to realize they need to be talking to their voters on independent media, but there's a lot of hesitation and fear, and it seems like they still prefer legacy media. I keep saying my podcast is bigger than your show. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, you know what I mean? So talk about your pitch to sort of leery Democrats. They've always talked about creating a left Joe Rogan, and here you are. Like, they wouldn't ever imagine that that's what you are in some ways.
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm the left Joe Rogan because although I liked trash talk, I don't traffic in conspiracy theories, which I think is really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
But I do think
their point. Their point is powerful. Yeah.
Yes, I do think that Democrats have establishment Democrats
Hmm.
have the appearance right now of being a conservative party because they are
Hmm.
preserving old tactics that they've used forever. Focus groups, disciplined messaging, word salad,
Hmm.
platitudes, and corporate media allows them to go on and non-answer things, and then they go to the next question and the next question.
Hmm.
And they're not evolutionary in following the changing
The
media
audience.
landscape.
Right, where the
Right.
audience is, right.
And people want to know the people that deliver their news. They want to know something about me personally. They want to know
Hmm.
something about you personally.
They
We've
do.
with these phones, we've gotten a little nosier. And the
Hmm.
same goes for politicians. We want to see them off the cuff. If they misstep, no big deal. And so some politicians are great. They come on. I've noticed the politicians, like an example, Ro Khanna. He doesn't take any corporate PAC money. He'll come on anytime. We don't have to have what are we going to talk about beforehand? He's just
Yeah, he's
completely
promiscuous.
liberated.
I joke with him about it. I said, "You have to be
Yeah.
promiscuous in this," and speaking of being on your back, you have to really be everywhere, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a great way for Democrats to evolve. And if they misstep, to be able to embrace, yeah, I was on there, we were spitballing. What I really mean is this. And look at how the Republicans slash MAGA movement have evolved in that regard. Look how far
Absolutely.
they've moved in that regard. And when I think about back in the day, it was the appearance that the liberals controlled all of the news.
Mhm.
So the right built this massive
Yeah, they were
media
left out.
ecosystem. Yeah, and now you see that the Trump oligarch friends, billionaire buddies are buying up all of the mainstream media. And we're the left out ones now. And so I'm so happy to collaborate with any podcaster, pro democracy person on the left because I see us all as allies that are messaging to a part of the electorate that is hurting, that feels targeted, that is grieving what they thought the promise of America is. Not to mention the financial anxiety that so many Americans are struggling from. And I see, and you probably see this with your audience, we're building communities. And it's so important to feel connected when you see so much injustice.
Well, it's a parasocial relationship in a weird way, but it isn't. It isn't that it's one way because we just finished this 7-city and 7-day tours with Pivot, and the community was what the critical part. We sold out everything, and a lot of regular media people call me and they're like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "How did you not do this? Like you're sitting in these airless studios, broadcasting essentially corporate media and what." Especially with the Democrats, I've said it's boring, it's not interesting, it's not but how do you get them to understand that independent media is where audience is? I think they kind of vaguely get it, and then they create these laboratories like, "We'll give $100,000 to figure it out." I'm like, "It's already figured out." It's not I don't know, it's very frustrating when I'm talking to a lot of them.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing. When we have a politician on and I get an email from one of their aides that wants the talking points, I'm like, this is not going to be that great of a guest because you need to be able to come in and have a conversation with our audience, open to anything, just like you and I. We don't have talking points before I came on here. I don't know what you're going to ask me. And that's what garners trust for you with your audience and for my audience that comes over here to be introduced to you if they don't know you yet, which I can't imagine they wouldn't. But they need to liberate themselves. And I think it goes like this. If they could liberate themselves from corporate donations, they could liberate themselves conversationally. They're so inhibited and they walk on eggshells. And that's why the Democratic establishment, to me, feels like the party of preservation. We want to
Right.
preserve the way it's always been. We want to preserve the status quo instead of evolving and becoming completely unobstructed
Right.
conversationally. And
Right.
in turn, they'll become a lot more likable and
Mhm.
electable.
Right. So you talked about who's getting it right. Who else? I agree with you on Roe. Who's getting it wrong? I mean, whenever I see a social media thing by either Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, I want to just cringe. It's like massive, like, what are you doing? Unless he really leaned into grandpa, right? I wouldn't mind that as much as what's happening. It's like being grandpa and then pretending you're not grandpa. That really irritates me. I would like a full grandpa on him. But what who's getting how do they get it wrong and who else is getting it right?
So I think the people that are getting it wrong are obviously Jeffries, Schumer, Cory Booker came onto our podcast and completely misstepped. It was really,
What did he
really.
do?
So I asked him, what have you had it with? And he said he'd had it with corporate PAC donations. And I said, well, don't you take money from AIPAC? And then the defenses started coming up. I asked him a very simple yes or no question. Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu's a war criminal? And the answer to that question is yes. And he couldn't answer it. He kept going on and on and on. And we kind of got into it. And there, if you think about it, there's been 3 missteps from establishment Democrats on podcasts surrounding this issue. Gavin Newsom was asked about AIPAC, and he says the word interesting 9 times. You count it out. Pete Buttigieg, who is a gifted orator, kind of face plants on Pod Save, and Cory Booker face planted on our podcast, and it went completely viral. And so I think that, again, it goes back to when you're beholden to very few, this is a very transparent media platform. You get exposed very quickly if you start BSing. The bullshit meter is instantly detectable. And so I think it's good that the ones that are getting it wrong right now, come on, see what the base is saying. Quit focus grouping. Get yourself out into the American public and see how it goes and change and evolve. And as a base, we have to be somewhat forgiving if they misstep and come back and clean up, because as much as Chuckles and Hakeem drive me crazy, they are the leaders that we have. They are who we have. And so I'm cheering for them to succeed.
Yeah.
So if they can clean up their kind of embarrassing, cringy posts and become more relatable, I'm going to cheerlead for them.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to be a sycophant for them and just go along with, boy, they wrote a strongly worded letter.
Right.
Go get him,
Right.
Chuckles.
That was Chuckles.
Way
yesterday.
to go, badass.
Strongly worded letter. I really mean it. And meanwhile, Trump's like knocking down the White House. Let's talk a little about them in just a second, but let's talk about your background. You were born and raised in Oklahoma. You lived there up until last month. But you always felt the odd person out, a liberal atheist and a conservative Bible vet. Talk about your political isolation as a young person and how did that happen? And recently as an adult with kids during the Trump era.
Yeah, so I was always the skunk at the garden party in the Bible Belt. I was raised by atheists. My mother is a voracious reader, learner. We always had the most stimulating conversations.
How'd they get there? How'd they talk about how they got there?
So my mother, born in Dallas, Texas, and she had a very mentally ill mother, probably borderline personality disorder. And her mother was really cruel to her. And my mother was around 7 years old, and she lost this little purse, and she lost it at church. And my mother just prayed and prayed and prayed. God, please help me find this purse. You know how mean she's going to be to me. This is going to be terrible. This is going to be terrible. This is going to be terrible. Lo and behold, her prayers went unanswered, and she never found the purse. She paid for it for years because her mother would be the type of person that would bring it up over and over and over and just browbeat her for it. And at her young age, in that kind of Dallas evangelical Christian world, she just sniffed it out that it wasn't real. So then she started taking the bus to the library when she was a teenager and just reading about religion and all of this stuff. And she, at a very young age, became an atheist and never bought into any of it. And growing up in my house, because when you live in the Bible Belt and your peers are evangelical Christians, their number one goal is not helping the poor, not helping the sick. It is to recruit you. It is to proselytize.
Right. Yeah.
So it was really difficult for me sometimes as a teenager because all of my friends were really, really, really religious. And I'm talking like spiritual warfare. I would go to slumber parties and a girl that I was at the slumber party would say, I can feel the presence of a demon in the corner of the room.
That would be you? No. Was it a K-pop demon? Anyway.
Probably. But in all of that just seems so insane. So I would.
So why did she stay there? Why did your parents stay there?
Well, I mean, my dad had business there, and my mother is not super social. Her best friend is cuddled up with a book. They traveled to My dad does a lot of, uh, business in Belgium and Holland. He flies racing pigeons,
Oh,
which is kind of an old sport, but it's very, very popular in Belgium and
hmm.
Holland. Very,
Okay.
very popular.
All right.
And my dad was the world's largest seller and breeder of racing pigeons, so he needed to live on a lot of land
Yeah.
because he didn't want you couldn't have
Those racing
neighbors with
pigeons need a lot of space. Yeah.
they need a lot of space,
Right.
and, so they would go to Europe multiple times a year. My dad lived over there a lot of the time. They were from Dallas,
Uh-huh.
both came from working class, middle class families,
Uh-huh.
and they entrepreneurs, and they became very successful. We became an upper middle class family, but moving wasn't ever in the cards for them. That
Right.
just wasn't
This is where
something.
they were. This is where they were. And so you were subjected to that, but raised by your dad also was not religious, correct?
Correct.
So here you are stuck here in the middle of nowhere, essentially, for you, from your perspective, doing the same thing, reading, being aware of this. Did you ever think about becoming evangelical?
Yes. So my very first boyfriend, his name was Sean, and I was just madly in love with him, as every teenager is with their first boyfriend. And Sean's dad was a retired Southern Baptist preacher. And Sean's mother was very concerned that he was dating an infidel. So she bought me a Precious Moments Bible.
No, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I have religious relatives. Go ahead. I have
So
one of
I
those.
started to read it, and my
Mhm.
mother was just horrified. I
Mhm.
mean, just like, I cannot believe the nerve of this woman, Jennifer, to buy you a Bible. That's
Right.
just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Sean's dad was retired, but he was only like in his mid 40s,
Mhm.
and he just didn't have his life together. They were
Mhm.
broke. The mom had to go back to work. And the whole thing, I mean, they weren't very good representatives
Of
of
the evangelical.
right. So my mother was very fascinated by Sean's dad
Uh-huh.
and his kind of economic decline, his mental decline, all of these things. So my mother this is before the internet,
Uh-huh.
spent time at the library and comes back. She says, Jennifer, she's real dramatic. She says, darling, I've diagnosed Sean's father. I believe he suffered from religious addiction. Here are these symptoms. And she's printed this article about religious addiction.
Yeah.
And she's printed all the symptoms. And he had every single one of them.
Oh, wow.
So at every turn that I tried to maybe try to fit in,
Yeah.
if you're not indoctrinated, it's a really hard pill to swallow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The creation story and all of
Yeah.
that. If that doesn't
No, my
enter your
grandmother,
psyche young.
on my dad's side, they're all very religious, and my aunt in particular was very religious and always sent me stuff. But we were sent over the summer. I have 10 cousins when we stayed at my grandmother's to Bible camp. My mom is Catholic, and she was horrified. She's like, "Why are they sending you to Baptist?" But it was really fascinating. I found it riveting, and they kept trying to get me, and it just never stuck. Neither did the Catholics, by the way, and they're much more of a soft sell, right? And at one point, when my aunt died, I just thought of this. They did the service. It was very Jesus-y, very, very. It was in West Virginia, and like, fine, this is their way, and stuff like that. And I sat there. It was like, okay, more Jesus, more Jesus, and then we get to the cafeteria where you're going to eat the food afterwards, and I was really hungry. It was a long service, and then the pastor, who's standing next to me again, I didn't realize, starts doing more of it. And I said, "Oh, for goodness sake, have we had enough Jesus?" And I said it out loud, and I was like, and then I go, "Never enough Jesus," like it was terrible. But when you met Angie, your co-host, she was a conservative evangelical. In the book you two published earlier this year, "Life is a Lazy Susan of Shit Sandwiches," and may I say, the finest title in the land. You wrote about having to put up with a hard boundary to get her to stop recruiting you to the church, and she obviously isn't conservative anymore. But you converted her, I guess. But in the early days, you bonded over other things: your kids, your difficult marriages, and and also it wasn't weird to be friends with people who voted differently than you then. But had you met Angie during the Trump era, would either of those things have outweighed your political differences? Do you see that happening?
Probably it would have, because it was when I met Angie, we were in the exact same season. We both married to attorneys. Both of these attorneys had a lot of interpersonal problems. We had kids the exact same age, and we had fantastic chemistry, and I really enjoyed her. But sometimes she would recruit me so heavily to go to Bible study and wouldn't respect the boundary because, and I'm not
What would you
picking on her.
say?
Well, like here's a prime example, Kara. We went to take the kids to toddler gymnastics because you're always trying to run the toddlers out so they'll go to sleep at night, right? So she had asked me to go to Bible study. I said no. Pick me up after Bible study. We'll take the kids to the pizza buffet and then we'll take them to gymnastics. She picks me up. This is a lawyer, and Pumps is smart. And she said, "Did you know that people used to live to be 950 years old?"
Oh, Methuselah. Yeah.
And I go, "Angie, that never fucking happened. It never happened. People live longer now because of two things:
All right.
filtered water and modern medications.
Uh-huh.
Those are the two reasons we live longer. Nobody ever lived to be 950. She said, "Well, there wasn't disease in the Garden of Eden."
Uh,
And I said, "According to whom?" And she said, "Well, the Bible."
Yeah.
And it was just this insanity. And sometimes after something like that happened, all of my friends in Oklahoma, I had found solace in a gaggle of gay men because they had been kind of picked on and shamed by the same group of evangelicals that had been targeting me. And I'm a decorator and like clothes, and gay men and I just get along.
Yeah. I have a friend
perfectly.
in Tennessee, same thing. Same
Yeah.
as a gaggle.
And so sometimes I would pull away from her a little bit because the overt religiosity was so much, but she was so good and finally respected the boundary. And we never got into it. We never had an adversarial conversation about it.
Which is
Never. It was all very civilized, but I would just slowly start dropping hints. Like I remember we went to the dinosaur museum in Norman, Oklahoma, at the University of Oklahoma.
Oh,
And we took
in.
our kids and we're looking at the dates of how long ago these dinosaur bones lived. And I said, "Isn't that something that this predates the Garden of Eden?" And she would kind of chuckle a little bit. So we kind of had this tongue-in-cheek thing back and forth. But she called me about 3 years ago. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting in my interior design office, and she called me and she said, "Jennifer," it was probably 4 years ago. She said, "Jennifer, I need to tell you something really important I've been talking to my therapist about." And Angie's never dramatic like this. And I was like, "Okay, what is it?" And she said, "After my dad died, I just don't think that he's in heaven." And I said, "You don't think he's in heaven because he's in hell, or you don't think he's in heaven because you don't believe in heaven?"
Right.
And she said, "I don't believe in heaven."
Wow. What happened?
And she started crying.
Oh, no.
And because of the grief associated with that.
Yeah.
And I just comforted her and said, "I love you. I know this has been a huge part of your life. What do you think?" She said, "I just think so much of this has been bullshit. I did everything I was supposed to do my whole life. I did everything right. And prayer, she was a good little girl, and all of the things." And it was just like the title of our book, a shit sandwich.
Right.
And so I called my mother after this and I told her, because my mother would always say, "Jennifer," she's in her Dallas accent, she'd say, "Jennifer, I think Angie's just darling, but as you all age, she'll become more religious, and I'm sure that you're,
Right.
go a separate way." So I told my mother that Angie had been in the process, unbeknownst to me, of deconstructing her faith with her psychotherapist. And my mother was so great. She said, "Jennifer, you need to be really supportive because there's a lot of grief involved in this."
Right.
Like she's grieving. It's like a death.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, especially because it's critically important. And I have a lot of respect. My grandmother went to Mass every day, a Catholic, and my aunt was the loveliest person you could meet, but almost constantly trying to recruit. It was a really interesting thing. And at one point, and she said, "Jesus died for you." And I said, "I didn't ask him." I was, and she's like, "Kara," and I'm like, "What? He didn't have to." And I was joking, obviously, but it was hard, and it definitely gave her comfort, and the same thing with my grandmother, which is why I was respectful of it. And actually, I was confirmed. I did the whole thing, the first Holy Communion, the first Holy Confession. But the day I was confirmed, I walked out of that church at 12, 13 years old. I never walked back in since. But you and Angie then launched the I've Had It podcast in 2022. And as you said, it didn't start off overly political, but it very much became one. The left-wing Twitch streamer Hassan Piker called it called I've Had It, the most radical progressive podcast in North America. And that's saying a lot from Hassan. As the show became more popular, you're still taking your son to basketball games. You're interacting with a lot of parents in Oklahoma who probably may not know about it or think you're a bad person. You're running your interior design business. Why did you start it, and what impact did it have on your lives in Oklahoma as it started to blow up?
It didn't have a whole lot of impact on our lives in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City is an exact microcosm of the whole United States electorate. We voted in our city just 1% more red than we did blue. And so you have, and you know this from your family and having people in red states, if you're a blue dot in a red state, you're built a little different. You're a tough style of liberal. So I have a lot of fabulous progressive friends in Oklahoma. And I had this, I still have the same friends now that I did before the podcast. So sometimes at basketball games, I would hear parents that I knew were triple Trumpers, that I knew were mega churchers, would say something like, I'm sorry I missed the last game. I was out of town. They would say, where were you? And I would say, oh, I was in New York. And they would say, were you scared? Are you okay? And I knew it was an immediate Fox News. But in general terms, people are pretty polite. Nobody has ever said something to my face disparaging in Oklahoma. Oklahomans are very friendly people. I think a lot of the vitriol we see are keyboard warriors more than anything. But it really didn't change my life in Oklahoma much. But here's one thing. A lot of people, a lot of women, a lot of men that really surprised me that I thought for sure were Republicans come up and they whisper, keep doing what you're doing. I love every bit of it.
When you were there. But you moved to Manhattan, that scary, terrifying place of wonder and
War-torn
fantasticness, after your youngest son started college in Los Angeles. But in your book, you talked about feeling really conflicted about leaving there. You cited your parents and your friends, these friends you're talking about, as a reason for staying. To what extent are you worried that doing a podcast from New York will change how people receive it? Because I think one of the most appealing things about your podcast was that it wasn't coming from the coastal media bubbles of Washington, D.C. or New York City or Los Angeles. That was something new.
So I had always I longed to live in a big city. Every time I would leave Oklahoma City, and I love Oklahoma City.
Right,
but every
because
time I
everything's
would
up to
leave,
date there. I don't know. It's gone about as far as they could go. Anyway.
yeah. And I just felt like, God, I really want to live in a big city. And there's this stereotype that is thrust upon women. So many things are thrust upon us that roles we have to fill. And one of them is that when you're an empty nester, you're just sent off to the pasture. Your eggs are no longer good. And you're supposed to be somewhat depressed with, your chickens out of the nest, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to rent an apartment in New York for a year. Why not? Why not have a midlife gap year? Why not do it? Why do I have to do what society has put on me? We started a new career midlife. Why can't I sign a lease for a year and see if I like it or not? I may end up running back to Oklahoma City. I may end up staying and extending it. But why not try to do something different? And I've been up here for 6 weeks now, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Where are you living? What part of the city?
Chelsea.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, the gays. You got with the gays. Yeah. You got to be comfortable.
And I brought my dogs, my French bulldogs up here because I'm happiest in their company. And it's just been, my husband is going back and forth. He's a criminal defense attorney, and our marriage is very battle tested. I supported him through his efforts to get sober, and he's been so supportive of me. He's like, it's your turn. And we finally have a big kid relationship.
Wow.
So that's been really cool.
What do you miss about Oklahoma City? Or Oklahoma, excuse me.
Tennis.
Tennis? Okay.
I play tennis every day.
Haven't you seen, there are tennis courts in New York, but go ahead.
They're so expensive and difficult to get. And in Oklahoma City, I can go every day on my lunch hour, podcasting or designing. I would go and play tennis, and there's just something very therapeutic. I'm not that good at it either, but I'd hit with a pro, grunt as I hit the ball, pretend like I'm, a professional, and I'm nowhere near that. But I exercise every day. I miss the ease
Yeah,
no
getting in the car.
traffic,
Yeah.
the ease in which you can move about.
Yeah.
But in general, I think my personality type, I'm better suited
Uh-huh.
in a big multicultural city. What's
Uh-huh.
been so cool, Kara,
Uh-huh.
yesterday I'm walking to the gym
Uh-huh.
and this guy on a bike, brown skinned, I don't know, Latino, Arabic or whatever, he turns his bike around and comes, he goes, "Hey, lady, I've had it, lady." And this happens like 4 or 5 times a day. He
Yep.
said, "Can I get a selfie?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Yes." And he grabbed my hand and he said, "Thank you for fighting for us. It
Yeah.
means everything."
Yeah.
And I just think that's
I get stopped like that a lot. In
really
fact,
cool.
I was just at the
Yeah.
hardware store 3 times. It was really interesting. I love a hardware
A
store.
lesbian at a
Oh,
hardware
yeah, I know.
store.
I'm not even gonna pretend it's not a cliché, but it's true. It's fair. But I don't like sports. So, I'm
Okay.
just keep 'em guessing. Keep 'em guessing.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the podcast because it really has given you this. And as I said, it's parasocial. People stop me all the time. I bet they really stop you. The tone is, blunt, irreverent, which I think you're exactly the way you are, which is why it works. It's genuine. There's a lot of swearing, which I enjoy. And you have fantastic nicknames for Republicans. President Trump is Cankles McTaco Tits, Kanks for short. I actually like Kanks better. I don't know why.
Yeah.
House Speaker Mike Johnson is Moses Mike Grinder Johnson.
So
It's
good.
funny. Do you care about turning off conservatives or moderate women who might be open to reconsidering, like people like Angie? Or, I mean, how do you come up with these names, and how do you? They seem very natural. So it's not a stunt. This is not. I have a feeling you've made nicknames for lots of people over the many years.
I have.
Yeah.
They came. We have a couple of talking points when we podcast, but we speak extemporaneously, and those just came up in the moment of filming. And, Cankles McTaco Tits. And then another episode, I shortened it to Kanks and I said, just for spite. And Moses Mike Grinder Johnson, he was originally Moses Mike because there's this video of him talking about becoming Speaker of the House where he says God woke him up in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, buddy, wake up. You're going to be Moses." And I'm like, we're acting like this is normal. This is crazy that he thinks he heard the voice of God and that God told him he was Moses. And then, of course, there are a lot of Grindr allegations about him. And so I threw that one in because I really love to just browbeat him. As far as turning off conservative women or moderate women, no, I'm not concerned about that because I know these women. And this is the Democrats' fool's errand, that they think that they can get these people to change their votes instead of investing in their base. And if you're ever going to get these people to like you, it is going to be by being authentic and getting on offense and get off of defense. Get completely off of defense. Offensively, we should be saying to these women that potentially I could offend. You're concerned about trans people? I'm concerned about the Republicans Party obsession with trans people. Y'all
Right.
talk about it all the time. I've never seen such trans-obsessed people. And I wish that we would be more offensive in our strategy. And I felt like, and I love Kamala, but I felt like she was going to lose when she started trotting around with Liz Cheney. That's when I first looked at pumps and I said, this is a problem. These women are never going to vote for her. Ever. We know these ladies. They're never going to flip because of Liz Cheney. And so I don't worry about that. And I think it's therapeutic to shit talk these bullies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And,
I make fun of people all the time. And is there a new name you're cooking up? Do you have other names for Trump, or are there new names for?
No, Kanks is really stuck. I do call JD Vance the failed drag queen, smoky eye sociopath, and now I've shortened that to Little Smoky.
I call him couch fucker.
Because he was a failed, couch fucker. But he was a failed drag queen, and I think it's important to point that out. There's the photographs of him who just wasn't good at drag.
Yeah, no, good eyes though. Speaking of going on you got to give it to him. You got to give it to him. Good eyes. You don't hold back against Democrats either. We talked about your viral moment with Cory Booker. You went viral for pushing back hard on former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, which I love to see. I know him pretty well, and who wants Democrats to move away from talking, for example, about trans rights. You said the Democratic Party, these men represent more moderate centrist establishment. I think they take a dive, essentially. I agree with you. More maddening than MAGA. The counter-argument is that the big tent party, you have ideological differences. So where's the line and compromise? Talk a little bit about these centrist I find them dickless. That's my way of thinking about it. They're sort of dickless. Like, you just say something that's not mean, or you don't win by being more like MAGA, because people go to the OG MAGA if they want that stuff.
It's exactly right. And I think I call these politicians pick me Democrats. Pick me. I'm not going to say anything that offends anybody. And then in the process, they're just milk toast. And we need to have politicians that we agree with. And let's take the example of Zohran Mamdani. He's probably further left than a lot of mainstream Democrats in the electorate. But a way to handle that is to say, he's a little bit further left than I am, but his electorate in New York City is further left than we are. And one thing that we have in common is his message of affordability. And then if these centrists, the Rahm Emanuels, and other Democrats that want to pick up the trans community, throw them under the bus and ride over them, we need to really be crystal clear that we will throw nobody under the bus. And if you have an economic populist message, then you need to say, we believe in equality for everybody, even somebody who is trans, and we will leave nobody behind in our plan. That's what MAGA does. MAGA leaves people behind. We're not cruel like they are. And I think there's a way that we could message that. But what pisses me off, Kara, is when I see Democrats buy into the right-wing media narrative that we need to move their way.
Right.
And I think that
Come
is
and
so
meet us
wrong.
in Oklahoma. It was interesting because I was in Kentucky. I talked about this on your show. When I was there, I was like, you don't know about me. Why do you get special privilege of being the real person? Like, and they responded to that. They were like, oh, that's a really good point. Like, you're not real Americans. I mean, you are, but so am I. Like, do you think there's a lot of push to be like Rahm, or Gavin Newsom did the same thing, a similar thing. Is that a real mistake? Because lately he's gotten more popular by not doing that, by being quite, out there, ubiquitous, kind of mean, kind of funny, not caring about offending people. He seems to be doing a lot better by being offensive, really. And I don't mean offensive, I mean on the offense.
Right. I think that the Democrats, the ones that have some corporate stuff they need to clean up, are going to have to clean it up, and they're going to have to go into their base, because the autopsy that I see on Kamala's election was the base didn't show up. And so we have the voters and we have the vote. And if we can wrap up a fuck you brand of politics, we're not leaving anybody behind. Yes, we're compassionate. Yes, we're woke, because we're not fucking assholes. And we're going to fight, tooth and nail for every single American, and leaving no one behind. Not one person behind. And we're not going to kiss the ass of these corporations that dick you over, don't have to pay taxes. I think that is the messaging, whether it's a little bit, not quite as far left as Zohran, but that economic populist message. And think about how much more it's going to be a year from now.
It's a Bernie
when the
Sanders message, really. It's kind of a Bernie Sanders message, who's now become adorable. But is there a more centrist Democrat you think that isn't out of touch with the electorate, like Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp Perez from Washington? Is there someone you look to and you like, I like the cut of your jib, that kind of thing?
So I think a really important lesson for Democrats is Andy Beshear in Kentucky. He is a Democrat that won twice, and he used his faith, which the Republican Party has put faith into the electorate forever now. The Democrats just ignore it. And Andy Beshear used his faith to stand up for trans kids. And he won.
Or James Tallarico, similar. Yeah.
Right. And he won twice. And for me, as an atheist, when I hear people talk about religion, any religion, I'm just like, oh, God. But we live in a very religious first world country.
Yeah.
And I know that they need to do this. And Andy Beshear isn't some crazy wild-eyed liberal. I would say he's a centrist. But more than anything, in our big tent, my thing is, I like to beat Republicans. I like to win. I like for us to win elections, because I know that if Republicans win, they will rain hellfire down on their citizens. These exploitative MAGA Republican politicians use the faith to weaponize against the voters, because so many people in Oklahoma, their whole social life is centered around the church. And so they Christian signal, the same people that accuse us of virtue signaling. I'm going to accuse them of Christian signaling to get them to vote against their own economic interests, but most importantly, to vote against the teachings of their alleged Lord and personal Savior, Jesus Christ,
Right.
who sounds a lot more like the atheist Jew Bernie Sanders
Right.
when he speaks than any of these MAGA politicians
Christ
in
came
these
back
red
today,
states.
they'd be like woke. They would not like Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus was kind of cool. Like the things he was saying, it was quite socialist too. He's quite a socialist. So let's get to some big news stories right now, because there's so many, like every 5 seconds, and I think Trump understands that and creates this constant news distraction rage machine, essentially. So this was a bad one. We saw Trump accuse a group of a half a dozen Democrats of seditious behavior that could be punishable by death. The Democrats had posted a video telling military leaders to refuse illegal orders, which actually is in their rules. It's one of the top rules of the military. The White House denies he was calling for the execution. He did say hanging. But Trump has desensitized us to that kind of dehumanizing language, I think. And when it gets too far, he says it's a joke, essentially. So how do you think the Democrats should be responding to the latest escalation? I think being indignant is, I have a lot of people saying, can you believe he did it? I go, yes. Yes, I can.
Me too.
Yes. Can you believe that drunk is drunk? I'm like, he's drunk because he's a drunk. Like, I don't know what else to say. How do you keep responding without adding to that feeling of desensitization and also not being constantly aggrieved, right? Which I think is something Trump does too. He's always aggrieved.
So I think that when I look at just mainstream media, the person who's been ubiquitous lately is Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right. I'm going to get to her. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
And why aren't the Democrats flooding the zone in reverse? Why are we not? And I agree with you, to act shocked that he tweeted what he tweeted yesterday is a level of willful blindness over what's happened in the last 10 years. I mean, this president incited an insurrection. We all saw it. And the Democrats need to be everywhere all of the time. Podcasts, mainstream media saying to the American public, aren't you sick to death of this? Another day in America with a man who has dementia, who is cruel as all get out, who has tanked the economy, and they just need to keep hammering it over and over. And I do think the Democrats also need to be forward-looking. Like they're doing a really good job muddying up JD Vance. He's going to be on defense a lot with the couch fucking, the eyeliner, not standing up for his Indian wife or his mixed race kids, and seeming to favor white nationalist talking points over the defense of his family. And I think we need to start muddying up any heir apparent of the MAGA movement, because they do such a good job branding Democrats a certain way. And I think they should be out nonstop, Democrats, beating this dementia thing. We know the media has it in them.
Yeah, I have
because they did it with Biden.
I have a message that I used on on our podcast tour, which I'm like, look, I don't think he fucked a couch, but he seems like he could be a couch fucker. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying he did. I'm saying if anyone did, I would pick him out of a lineup of couch fuckers, essentially. So, and I just like the word couch fucker. I just
it's so good.
Please
it's just
borrow
like
it.
Kanks. It's super satisfying.
Couch fucker. So let's get to Greene. You've been talking a lot about it. You think Greene and Tucker Carlson, and I agree, are positioning themselves for a post-Trump Republican Party. They're very savvy, both of them, especially around U.S. support for Israel and the war in Gaza. You say Democrats aren't taking them seriously enough, and they haven't learned the lessons of 2016 and 2024. They're assuming voters will think they're too crazy, and of course, Greene has pulled back on the crazy. Suddenly she's very sensible, it seems like. And I just talked to Scott Jennings, of all the people, and he's convinced that Vice President JD Vance will be the Republican nominee in 2028, which I thought, yay, because he's repugnant to voters. How would someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker take over the party? And what are your thoughts of what each of them are up to?
Okay. Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you look at what she's doing, she's using the Trump playbook. She is coming out of the gates attacking fellow Republicans. That's what Trump did. Lion Ted, Little Marco, low energy Jeb.
Right.
Who advised Trump
By the
to
way,
do
all
of
accurate,
this?
but go ahead.
100% spot on. Loved it when he did it at the time. I'm like, finally, somebody is browbeating these horrible, soulless Republicans. She's doing the same thing right now. Steve Bannon advised Trump back in the day, and now he's advising Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is doing an America First messaging, which if you're on your algorithm and you see a cat and you see a hot person and you see, a tennis court, and then you see Marjorie Taylor Greene say, why did we give a blank check to Israel? Why are American taxpayers paying for this? They have free health care. They have free higher education, and we don't. We know the American electorate is okay with people being crazy and voting for them. They've done it twice with President Trump. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing a slight rebrand too, because right now it's so toxic and so horrific. So there's a blending of Biden's 2020 campaign of we're going to bring you back to normal, we're going to lower the temperature. The problem for Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the biggest rise in the country right now, besides anti-immigration bigotry, is a rise of misogyny. So I don't know if that's going to be too big of an uphill climb for her. And I do think Tucker Carlson is really paving the way to make a very crazy racist big tent with an assist now from the Heritage Foundation after he platformed Nick Fuentes. And I didn't think MAGA could move further to the right, but the heir apparents, I'm going, oh shit, they're going to go even more to
Right.
the
She
right.
certainly is more appealing. If she was a man, she'd do a lot better. You're right. You're absolutely right. But she certainly, her modulation is fascinating. And what I want some reporters to do, and I really enjoy her saying some of the things she's saying because I agree with her. But then I want them to say, tell me about what you think of immigrants. Tell me what you think of trans people. Tell me what you like. Let's make sure people realize, as reasonable as she sounds, she's not reasonable. Like, let's let her talk about the things where she's going to go.
Gay marriage.
Right. Yeah. What do you think of my marriage? Just curious.
Right. I mean, that's one that we could really ask. What do you think of gay marriage?
Right.
Do you think these people are going to burn in hell?
Right.
Do you think the Supreme Court should overturn that?
Right.
These are very, very, very important questions.
Right. We're going for the stuff we agree with her on, like, yes, on this. But the split, within the MAGA movement, which I think she is leading, and I think she's a very deft politician, actually, but also apologizing for her conspiracy theories, saying I was indoctrinated and I'm now out of it.
QAnon.
She's smart that way. And actually, you know what? That might be true, right? That I know a lot of people like that for sure. And it's a very legitimate explanation, if true.
And it offers an off-ramp
for her,
for the people that are still in it. That the Epstein thing, I mean, for a lot of people, their identity was this QAnon thing. They formed a sense of community.
Right.
And it's a noble cause to say we're fighting for the kids against these pedophiles.
Right.
And then you find out the guy that you thought was going to whistleblow on the whole thing is Cankles deep in the epicenter of it, And then she's offering an off-ramp to say, look, I was in that too, but you still can be a conservative Republican so they don't lose their whole identity.
It's really one of the few issues Trump has had to retreat on because of pressure for his own party. Having spent most of your life in bright red state, as you said, why do you think it was the Epstein? I know why it is from being, deep in the online spaces that punch through for MAGA voters and not the bevy of billionaires at Trump's second inauguration, which they're starting to pay attention to, for sure. The right is too, also. The private plane, the tariffs, the rising prices, they are paying attention to that. But why Epstein, and what should Democrats be doing right now? Obviously, they passed this bill. We'll see how that, and he signed it, how it goes. But from your perspective, what's the strategy around this? Because it sticks.
It sticks. I think if I were a Democratic strategist, my number one talking point right now would be the blowjob with Bubba that allegedly Vladimir Putin has evidence of. We know the right wing has a very long attention span surrounding the subject of blowjobs. Look no further than Bill Clinton. That went on and on. Newt Gingrich, Ken Starr, they impeached him for it. So lean into this blowjob where it also ties in national security. And if I were a Democrat on, a Democratic strategist, I would say, you're telling me the president of the United States gave somebody named Bubba a blowjob and Vladimir Putin has evidence of it? Is that why he keeps bending over for Putin all the time? Because, oh my God, Kara, the big thing that I've heard forever, my whole life living in a red state is, well, I believe in national security. I'm a national security Republican.
Right.
It's this big thing, support the troops, blah, blah.
Uh-huh.
And the fact that there's so much shit against this guy that Mark Epstein comes back out, Kara, and says, hey, FYI, the Bubba guy wasn't Bill Clinton.
It was the
But
other.
he doesn't deny the blowjob or that Putin
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
evidence of
Right.
it.
Right.
So if I were the Democrats, I would be beating the drum about this blowjob because here's the thing. This dictator
Okay.
is built on
Right.
this masculinity. And now the dictator is frail. He's no longer a strong man. We're seeing the physical manifestations of his frailty. Tack on him giving a blowjob and also keep pointing to the fact that when he was on the campaign trail, he tried to give a microphone a blowjob with surprising familiarity to the procedure.
Okay.
And that's on tape.
Is that, but is that the way, like Democrats do like to say that, we're not them, right? We're not going to stoop. It's a bit
We're
stupid.
not them and we lose.
Yeah. Okay.
We're not them and we lose.
Right. Okay.
So that's right.
So
that's
Bubba
exactly
blowjob. All right. That's
what I think.
That's not
I
very
think
Ezra Klein of you. We'll get to him in a second.
We have to stop integrity politics
Yeah.
and stop assumption politics, and we have to fight these people with everything in us and quit trying to set some moral high ground that no longer exists in this moment. Hopefully we can get back to that, but in this moment, no.
Okay.
Go dirty. Talk about Bubba.
Yeah.
Blowjob.
You're so Lee Atwater. You're Lee Atwatering me all over the place. So every episode we get an expert question. I selected yours very carefully.
I'll be right there. Hey, Jennifer, it's Anderson Cooper. I really actually would have some questions about kids because I'm making milk right now and 6 a.m. And hey, buddy, they're very ungrateful. But what I'm going to ask you about is just a hypothetical. If, say, you were on a plane and it was your job to ask people questions and you asked somebody a question and they said, quiet piggy, how would you respond?
Thank you so much. That is so cool that Anderson Cooper just asked me a question, Kara. See, again.
And in 6 in the morning, getting milk for his children. That's
more evidence of how cool you are.
I know,
and
it's true.
By proxy, I'm cooler.
I heard
Yeah.
that's a dream. That's a dream guest for you.
Yes.
All right. So here you are with President Trump. He says to you, you ask a question. He says, quiet piggy. What do you say?
I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me, you fat ass? You're calling me a piggy? You obese MFer? With your swollen ankles, are you for real right now? Maybe blend your makeup before you start trying to drag me. Go try to find a fat picture of me, piggy. One doesn't exist. I would just fucking go off. I would be horrible.
Would you?
Horrible. I would get arrested. Kash Patel would arrest me, Kara. I would be arrested. The
See,
Secret
I told
Service
you
would arrest me.
I had the different thing.
Yours is way better.
Yeah.
You're far more reasonable
No, it
than I
wasn't
am.
reasonable. He'd say, quiet piggy. I'd say, what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. And then he'd have to repeat it. And I'd say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you say that again? I just make him say it over and over again so that it was just creating a viral moment where that would be even worse than just quiet piggy, like lots of quiet piggies. And then he might say, bitch.
I'd be too mouthy.
Really? I just want him to do it more. I want him, if he's digging the hole, just let him keep digging. That's my feeling. I was sort of surprised nobody said anything. I could see the person being sort of taken aback, but no one around her said anything. Which
I was really surprised at that.
Yeah.
I was really, really surprised that nobody came to her defense, that his bullying has, as particularly of the press, has become so normalized that they just sit there and take that abuse like Stockholm syndrome, the people that follow him around. It should never be.
Well, they
normal.
want access. They want access. Anyway, we have a couple more questions. We're going to talk about the midterms really quickly. On the podcast, you've been talking a lot lately about how Democrats should not accept money from AIPAC. You just said that. It's a hard line they shouldn't cross. It's an issue you talk about a lot. And a large majority of Democrats have an unfavorable view of the Israeli government. The shift in imagery in its brand has gone down. The party's a lot more divided when it comes to support for Israel more broadly. And a poll last month from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs found that, more than 2/3 of liberal Democrats think the U.S. is supporting Israel too much. Fewer than 3 in 10 moderate Democrats felt that way. I definitely know kids, young people, have a very different attitude. My kids' attitude has changed really drastically because they have eyes, right? That's what I say. Someone's like, how could they do that? I'm like, well, they don't think what happened on October 7th. They think that's a war crime, but they also have eyes. Like, they can hold a thought in their head, a different thought in their head. So how do you talk about Israel on the campaign trail without alienating large swaths of this base? Because they're certainly have reasons to be concerned about anti-Semitism at the same time.
Well, I think that we have to have moral clarity about this, and we can't speak in any form of doublespeak. A Democratic politician should very clearly say, we support Jewish people and we stand against all forms of bigotry, period. However, when it comes to the Israeli government, that should not be attached to Jewish people in the same way. Any criticism of the Trump administration doesn't mean an insult to uh, Americans that didn't vote for him. It's a very simple, elementary argument that you can criticize Donald Trump, and that doesn't mean you're criticizing Kara Swisher and Jennifer Welch. And as a person who believes in human rights, I welcome the criticism of my government. I wish Switzerland wouldn't have finally picked a side for the first time ever when they bent over and are making trophies for Kanks to try to get the tariffs removed. I want countries and journalists to criticize this fascist regime that is kidnapping people off the streets in our country. The same way, I think we should criticize Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, and this is according to Israeli press, he had cash driven into Hamas, and this whole thing a spotlight needs to be shown on it, and they can't hold us emotionally hostage by telling us, if you criticize Israel, you're being anti-Semitic. That is bullshit. That is emotional blackmail. That is incredibly toxic. We can see what they're doing. And the United States government is left behind on all of the other world's democracies in criticizing Benjamin Netanyahu. And we're supposed to be a beacon of democracy. But now we have this new alignment where the only time it seems like Kanks gets excited is when he's in the presence of fascist dictators.
Right.
Look at what just happened with Saudi.
That was speaking of blowjobs. We also talked about Rahm Emanuel trying to get Democrats to move away from, say, trans issues and saying things like, I'm done with discussion of bathrooms. There's Ezra Klein, who's been doubling down, who's gotten a real glow up, by the way, who's doubling down on the idea the Democrats should run candidates who oppose abortion in some places. It's necessary to win more House and Senate seats. Presumably these kinds of candidates think Democrats should run in places like Oklahoma. What does it look like, a Democrat that wins in Oklahoma? I think of Laura Kelly of Kansas, for example, very popular Democrat. How do you do that? And I find a lot of what Evers is doing is incredibly ridiculous compromises and very calculating in a way that's not genuine, right? Like trying to manipulate voters. But how do you do that?
So the most recent gubernatorial campaign that we had in Oklahoma, you had Governor Kevin Stitt, who ran. He's a Christian nationalist. He dedicated every square inch of the state to Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I've met him.
And
very polite. Let me just say.
Polite. And then he ran against this woman named Joy Hoffmeister. I can't remember the last name. Anyway, I voted for her, helped campaign for her. And she ran as MAGA light, as a Democrat. And it doesn't work because the indoctrination of people in red states to be Republican is very intense, and it's every bit as intense as to be a Christian. And they use this spiritual warfare type thing in churches to also say the Democrats are demons. They're demon rats. So you have to offer something incredibly different and weaponize their faith for good and say, would Jesus want us to fund all of these billionaires? And so that's why I think a candidate like Tallarico or Andy Beshear, who uses their faith in these instances, if you try to be a MAGA light,
they want the OG.
That's exactly right. So it doesn't work. And the problem with Ezra Klein throwing women under the bus as a person who just moved out of a state that has a total abortion ban. Kara, there are so many women, and this disproportionately affects the poorest, which then becomes the Black and brown people of my state, that go to get an ultrasound for their pregnancy, 18, 20 weeks, and there's some debilitating issue with the fetus. And they're told, this baby is, whenever you deliver it, it's not going to live, and there's nothing we can do for you. And so if they can afford it, they have to drive to a state where they can get health care. And if they can't afford it, then they're risking messing up all of their reproductive parts to deliver this baby and then watch it basically suffocate. And so when I hear liberals that have never lived in a red state try to focus group and workshop how to deal with red states, and part of that plan is to throw trans people under the bus or to throw women under the bus, it really pisses me off. It really, really, really pisses me off.
Yeah, it's so compromising. Anyway, in that I have two more questions. We had Senator Bernie Sanders on the show a few weeks ago, and one of the things he talked about was how the Democratic Party had abandoned huge swaths of the country. In places like West Virginia, he said the party is virtually non-existent. So what's the biggest thing the party gets wrong about the so-called flyover states like Oklahoma? If you could sit down with the chair of the DNC, what would you tell him?
If I could sit down with the chair of the DNC, I would say you have to start a 50-state strategy immediately. Even if you lose several cycles, it will make an impact. Look at the impact that Bernie Sanders has made. Every time he's run for president, he's lost, but his message permeates, and he made the soil ripe for AOC, for Zohran Mamdani. I would tell them what's interesting about a state like Oklahoma and what's interesting about red state people is if you poll them individually on things, are you for gun control? Yes. Majority of red state Oklahomans would say this. Are you for a woman's right to choose? Yes. And so they need to start running progressive candidates that talk about values, progressive values. And I wish that they would send a Democrat to Oklahoma, rural Oklahoma, everywhere, and said, you have been lied to. You have been lied to and used by the Republican Party. I would start branding them as liars that exploit people's faith, which is the most diabolical thing you can do and the most unchristian thing to do. I would get so aggressive about rebranding this Republican grift that has happened in red states and speak to them and tell them what you're seeing, what has happened to you is real.
Yeah,
you have been lied to. You have been gaslit by this Republican Party. I know it's hard to think about voting for somebody else, but why is Bernie Sanders, the atheist Jew, why does he sound more like Jesus than Kevin Stitt? Why is that? And people are, I believe
they're smart.
in people.
I agree. I think voters are smart. I do. I think we talked down to them. I was in a red state and as I think I told you yesterday, was explaining what was going to happen to their coal mines. And everyone else was making all these pretend things about how they were going to become software and Silicon Holler. And I was like, I said, this guy's going to replace you with a robot. He's not going to tell you that, but I'm telling you that. And so many people came up to me and they were like, you're a lesbian from San Francisco, but you just told the truth. I'm like, yes, I did. I was like, and I said, I don't really think that it matters. And I'm just telling you, I'm telling you what time it is. And these people are lying to you. So, and I know they're your friends, but they're lying to you. Like, and it does permeate. It not with everybody, but it's, not like my mom who's like a Fox News propagandized lady. But every now and then it does. It gets through to her sometimes. I don't know. Maybe not. She's too old. It doesn't really matter. So she's only got a few more elections in her. But it's really hard once they get that way. But they're certainly reachable. Okay. So you end your shows by playing a game with your guests called Had It or Hit It. So since you just moved to New York, 6 weeks, I want to play a game of Would You Rather. I've got a list of things specific to New York City. Here we go. You ready? Would you rather sit on a subway next to a rat or someone watching porn on their phone?
Oh, the porn, for sure.
You'd watch it yourself. You'd be like, interesting. All right.
I don't like rodents. I would go with the porn all day.
All right. Eat a Papaya King hot dog or a Zabar's black and white?
Papaya King hot dog.
Have you had one yet?
No.
Go. 86.
Okay, maybe I will for lunch.
86. Where are you? Oh, you're in Chelsea. There's one down there. There's one in 33rd or something like that. Yeah. Papaya King.
Okay.
And get the drink too. Okay. Be trapped in an elevator at Trump Tower with Don Jr. or a dirty Elmo from Times Square?
Oh, I'm going Elmo for sure. I'm going with Elmo.
Have you met Dirty Elmo yet?
No, I haven't.
It's a great New York experience. Do not let them hug you. As hard as you can, do not let them touch you. Same thing with Don Jr. Okay. Get a drink and an extended hug with Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams? Sorry.
Oh, my God. Oh, that's a good one.
I know. I try my hardest.
I think I'm going to go. Oh, I'm really splitting hairs here, Kara. Okay, I think I'm going to go with Eric Adams.
Yeah, I agree. He wouldn't
Yeah.
grope your ass, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or allegedly. Allegedly. Ugh, the Cuomo's are mad at Kara Swisher because I had Curtis Sliwa on stage in New York. They're mad. They're incandescent.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, wasn't he? Yeah. Get him on.
Oh, my.
Get him on.
He is hilarious.
I know, wasn't he? People would,
Yes.
I walked into that theater and my Brooklyn fans were like, what is he doing here? And I'm like, just wait. And then they were like, we love him. Like, I was like, see, I told you. Yeah, he is funny. He likes cats. That's all I need to know. Okay, two more. Go to Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade or the New Year's Eve ball drop. Some of these are positive.
I'm going to go with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade because I think New Year's Eve is, it's past my bedtime.
Yeah.
I like to be asleep by 9 p.m.
Yeah, sorry, Anderson. You just insulted Anderson Cooper.
I know, sweet Anderson came on and asked me a question.
I know. All right, last one. Jump in the East River or eat a piece of pizza from the subway platform.
Oh, my God. I think I'm going to go with the East River.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're never
then you
coming
can just
back
go home.
From that. Marissa.
You don't think so?
Mariska
E.
Hargitay
coli.
is going to come fish you out. You should hang with her. She's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, she is cool.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me, Kara. You're cool. I love talking with you, and I hope that we continue our budding friendship
Absolutely.
to many more episodes and collabs on and off the air.
Yep, we have to do it. We're like the nice version of Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. Today's show was produced by Christian Castro-Russell, Kateri Yoakum, Michelle Alloy, Megan Burney, and Kaylin Lynch. Nishat Kurwa is Vox Media's executive producer of podcasts. Special thanks to Andrea Lopez Cruzado, and our theme music is by Trackademics. If you're already following the show, you get my favorite hot dog, the Papaya King hot dog. If not, you're blowing Bubba. Thanks for watching. See you on Thursday.